chasing adrenaline. That's not what I mean by being alive and awake to your life. And then go, oh my God, I've wasted all this time. I would have done things completely differently. I think the majority of us live every day like we're sleepwalking. We don't take the cues of waking up. We don't take these like small wake-up calls. Unfortunately, it's these big, massive life crises that like wake us up to our life. Maybe our marriage, of 2 or 3 decades falls apart. Maybe there's a medical diagnosis. Something happens that then kind of shocks us into waking up. And I don't want us to have to get to that point before we wake up. I'm trying to help us wake up before those big moments. And one of the ways that I like to do that for myself, just one of the ways, is getting real connected to urgency. And sometimes people are scared to do this because I think when you think about like the fact that you have one life or that you could die tomorrow or, like it feels morbid and people kind of run from that. And I don't want fear to be a motivating factor, either for good or bad. But I do think that becoming awake to the urgency of life. You have one life. And you don't know if it's decades long, more, or days. But what if you just lived with an urgency? And that urgency would cause you to say, like, am I doing what I want to be doing? Am I living this life the way I want to be living it? Is this what I saw for myself? And if it isn't, what needs to change? I think the urgency is a real good motivator when so many times motivation is what we're lacking to make any changes. That motivation overrides our exhaustion. And that exhaustion is real prevalent, I think. We're carrying a lot of emotional labor. There's a lot that we're dealing with in midlife, and the exhaustion is real. And so many of us can't reach out of that pit of exhaustion to make any headway on making changes that feel proactive and shifts the direction of our life. We're so under the wave of exhaustion that we just end up living kind of more reactive lives. So how do we shift that? I think the answer is creating a practice where the urgency becomes real and tangible. So if you asked yourself every morning, what if I knew December 30th was my last day on earth? Wherever I am in relation to December 30th, what would I do differently today? What would be different today? That's just one way. The other thing that I like to do is really shake myself out of my daily routines, because sometimes the daily routines just lull us into this like comfort zone. So I often am doing things to shake up my life so that I'm reconnected to the urgency of this one life, but also I'm not like leaning into the comfort of the same 4 walls that have held me since I was born. I'm shifting the ground that I'm standing on so that I'm always limber, that I'm always thinking about life in this present moment. I think the biggest wake-up call to me in my 30s was this. I was in a career and I hated it. It was draining the life out of me. I was exhausted, but not just exhausted, I was unhappy, and not just unhappy, it was making me sick, like physically sick. Migraines, pains, like strep throat that I would keep getting consistently. And I knew it was my career, but I didn't know how to get out of it. Like, it didn't seem like it was possible. What am I going to do? I spent years building into this career. I've spent thousands of dollars going to school with student loans into this career. How do you just leave that? That's not what people do. It's not what responsible people do. But it's also just not an option. And for 4 years, I lived like that, getting more and more sick, sick and tired, until I was like, if I stay, like I'm more afraid of staying than I am of the unknown and the uncertainty of leaving. It took me 4 years to get to that point, to say like, I'm more scared to stay and see my body deteriorate more and be so unhappy. I'm more afraid of that than I am of the uncertainty of like, what do I do for money? What does my life look like without this career and the identity I've built around? And when you get to this point where the uncertainty, the fear of the uncertainty is greater than the fear of staying, it becomes very easy to make the decision. And when I did, I turned in my 30 days notice. I didn't have another job lined up. I just knew I couldn't stay one more day. And I would figure it out. Like anything would be better than what I was doing. And that's what I mean by getting to the real understanding of what's at stake. We have that in our minds, but until that becomes real for us, the taking action feels real hard. When it becomes real, the stakes, you can take action pretty easily. So I don't think that we have to spend time thinking about like, why are things like this? Why am I tired? Like, I think we need to spend our energy and our time going, what's real here? What's really at stake here? And what's at stake here is this. When you are living a life where you're sleepwalking, where you are more busy than alive, what's at stake is that you have lived this one life, never doing what you were supposed to be doing, never doing what fulfilled your purpose, always pushing the can down the road, waiting for retirement to live your life. And the regret of that kind of life, unlived, is a tragedy. Because nothing else matters. If you're not living on earth your one life the way, like with your purpose, nothing else matters. And that sounds dramatic. I'm hearing it, and as I'm saying the words, I know that you might be thinking like, that sounds dramatic, but it's pretty dramatic to get a medical diagnosis at 49 and then go, oh my God, I've wasted all this time. If you know anybody that's gone through that, you immediately know what I'm talking about. Where people are like, I just wish I had more time. I would have done things completely differently. And what I'm saying to you right now is, you have that ability. Like right now, that time is yours. Like you are before that moment. So wake up, right, to your life. Wake up to your purpose. Just in case you're thinking that to live an alive life, you have to burn it all down. You have to be on the ski slopes. You've got to go and sell everything, and you've got to, scuba dive, and you've got to skydive, and like chasing adrenaline. That's not what I mean by being alive and awake to your life. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to jump out of an airplane to feel alive. If that's what it takes for you, great. But if you're someone who's like, but I just really like gardening, or, I'm a homebody. What do you mean? Like, maybe, what does aliveness look like for me? Let me read to you a little bit of what aliveness looks like for me, because I made a list. I was kind of curious after watching a creator one day, someone that I really admire. She's so adventurous, and I was watching her reel, and I was like, I don't necessarily want to do those things. So what does aliveness mean for me? Okay, so for me, aliveness means it's not just that I'm happy. It's actually when I do something that feels aligned with what I want and what I love doing. Aliveness happens for me when I do something I didn't think I could do. It happens when I keep promises to myself. I feel really alive when I can decide on something and then follow through with it. It makes me feel really alive. I feel alive when I remember how big the world is and how small I really am in it. I feel alive when I feel connected to, it's like in my faith, to who I believe is like the creator of the world. It makes me feel really alive when I connect to that. I feel really alive when I try new things and I feel like a beginner. And that is an uncomfortable feeling. So aliveness doesn't necessarily mean that like all good things, everything's working out. For me, sometimes it just means feeling awake, even to struggle. Just feeling awake to who I am and what I want. That's what aliveness feels like. It happens when I start to make sense of what's happening to me in life. And I think about my experiences and I kind of like squeeze the juice out of those experiences. And I start to like integrate those life lessons into the fabric of who I am. I feel alive when I get to do that. I feel really alive when I get to do something that I really want to do, even if it makes no sense to anybody else. So if you love knitting and that makes you feel really alive, that's it. Like, yay, you're doing it. Like, do more of that. You know, like aliveness doesn't have to look like high adrenaline sports. It looks like whatever makes you feel lit up inside. Feeling alive is what happens when I look at the state of the world and how hard it is, and I still am able to say, I'm going to live the hell out of this life. I want us to wake up and not just say that, but I want us to do that. How can we do that more?